Hello everyone, my name is Rasen, and welcome to the Rider Kickcast. I am here with Fang.
Hi, it's me, Fang, the Rider 2 to Rider 1 over here.
Oh, that's gross, don't say that.
You knew it was coming at some point.
Yeah, I kind of set
the
myself
way.
up for that.
Yeah.
So, recently, in like the past year or so, our friend group has kind of stumbled on into becoming Kamen Rider fans in a roundabout way. Some of us more than others. Like, I think I'm I'm like a diet Kamen Rider fan, but you and some of the other people in our friend group have really jumped into this thing.
Yeah, I'm a high-calorie Kamen Rider enjoyer.
Like, at this point, because we started with, some of our friends got together and were like, hey, we should watch Kabuto. And I kind of jumped onto that when y'all were halfway through it and just kind of caught up so I could watch along with all of you. And that was my first experience with the series at all. And then we started watching Build, which we still need to finish at some point whenever people have the time to watch. We're close to the end.
We're at like 40-something.
40 yeah, of like 50 episodes or something, right? So
yeah, the last arc.
And then you've watched a few shows just on your own too, then, right?
Yeah. So like, we watched Kamen Rider Kabuto, and I was like, yeah, this Kamen Rider stuff is pretty pog, pretty neat. So I watched Build. And that's why we're watching Build now in the group, because I watched it. And in no particular order, I've watched like a lot of random series depending on how I was feeling that particular day. But in no particular order, the list of series that I finished from the overarching Heisei series, which maybe we can get into at a later point in Kamen Rider history. I've watched through all of Kamen Rider Kuga, Kamen Rider Ryuki, Kabuto, of course, Kamen Rider X-Aid, Kamen Rider Build, and Kamen Rider 01. So it's pretty... I've watched a lot of them kind of spread out in terms of like their time spans and eras, but I have not watched any of the older Showa era series, which maybe you can talk a little more about that.
I can, because I don't know shit about any of it. So I watched Kabuto along with the gang. I watched what we've seen of Build in our group watch setting together, which is the majority of Build. I torrented Gaim and watched a few episodes of that, but then we got to talking. That's probably the next thing we'd all watch together. I don't know if we still plan on doing that at any point, so I stopped watching Gaim. Other than that, at some point I got curious and I purchased the first 3 volumes of the manga, which was kind of like the manga and this original TV show we're going to be talking about here today came out side by side, and if I believe it was like the one of the showrunners kind of taking the initial premise and just making his own like manga off of it. Like, they weren't really like, one isn't based off of the other so much as they were just the same premise and different takes on that same idea, basically.
Yeah.
And I want to because I was reading it through Comixology and I was actually kind of pissed and stopped reading because I got some shit to say. Hold on, let me see who put this out, if it'll give me a it's not giving me a publisher, I don't think. But anyways, whatever publisher was putting out the Kamen Rider stuff out in English back in 2012, we're like, hey, we're gonna do this in 4 volumes. And they got 3 volumes in, and they're like, not enough people are buying this shit, we're just gonna stop. And
Oof.
I understand business is business, but I feel like if you get 3/4 of the way through the damn thing, I feel like you owe it to the audience you have to just finish the damn thing and just hold the L. I'm sorry, but as soon as I read that, I'm like, well, fuck that, I guess. Thankfully, I think
Yeah.
it's Seven Seas is coming out with a complete omnibus collection later this December. That's going to collect the full thing, so I'm just going to get that. But yeah, I bought all 3 of those, assuming it was the full thing, and then I learned, oh no, there's supposed to be a 4th volume that wrapped it up that they just never put out in English because they're like, this doesn't make us enough money. So yeah, the world was not yet ready.
It really wasn't.
Yeah, like, I feel like if you would do that now, I don't know. I feel like this sort of thing has gotten a lot more attention in the past 9 years since these were released, and I think maybe if they had attempted this a little later on, it would have got more eyes on it, but who knows.
Yeah, for sure.
So I read the first bit of that, and some of that I was very happily surprised appeared here in at least the first episode of the show. I don't remember quite much beyond that, but I remember watching this first episode, which we'll get into a little bit, and going, "Oh, this is just like that the manga I read in a lot of ways." So
for sure.
But other than that, yeah, I have very little history with this massive sprawling series. So this original show that we're going to be talking about, Kamen Rider, came out from April 3rd of 1971 and ran for 98 episodes to February 10th of 1973.
Which is by far the longest series out of all of the, I guess, sub-series in the franchise. 90, oh god. Yeah, that's like nearing 100 episodes. I'm pretty sure no other series gets closer to that number. So, like,
yeah,
it's a beefy boy.
I looked around a little bit, and I was wondering about that myself. And it seemed like, at least from what I glanced through, it looked like this was the one that was the longest. And then they started to go for like individual series with different like names or whatever for their subsequent seasons and approaches to the franchise.
It's really interesting.
Part of the reason that we're here recording this with our microphones right now is 98 episodes is a long time. And I think both of us kind of came up with the idea. I think both of us kind of came up to the idea, if we do this, we might need something to motivate us to go back through and actually watch this damn thing. So we're gonna make it into a little watch-along podcast. So I don't know how you're watching this, but this is available through Shout Factory. Which is also... That's how you're doing it too? Okay.
Yep.
Now, I don't know. So I'm doing this because Prime Video has this thing where you can subscribe to different channels, and then it'll basically give you, like, those miniature streaming services inside of Prime Video. So I just signed up for it on there. And I don't know I don't know how different that is from just signing up for Shout Factory itself. But I was scrolling through, and first of all, if you want to watch along with us and you feel like doing it officially and not like torrenting or finding it, however, just I guess for the sake of using the sub, probably if you want to watch along with us and have the same subs that we're using, that's where you find the version of the show that we're watching. I'm sure that there's a bunch of fan subs and stuff out there because this thing's old and iconic, and that's usually how that goes. Now, Shout Factory is $3 a month. It gives you, at least on Prime Video, gives you like a 7-day free trial. This isn't an advertisement for them, by the way. This is just what I've saw. This was my experience for those of you who want to watch along with us that are like, what is this worth getting?
Clarification. You can watch it free from Shout Factory on their websites. You don't have to sign up for anything. Same with...
Well, fuck me. Well, good thing I'm still in that 7-day free trial.
I feel like this happens a lot where like you go pay for something and one of us is like, oh, you can get that for free. Like, I don't know.
I feel like that's true.
I feel like this has happened, but it's
I think this has happened a lot too. This is just my luck. Well, hey, if you want Shout Factory, I guess you could do that. You can also get a bunch of Werner Herzog films, which I was shocked why they had them. A shit ton of Mystery Science Theater, and Downfall, like that Hitler movie where all the memes came from. Weird eclectic mix Shout Factory has. Also just a bunch of like weird 70s and 80s horror movie trash that looks interesting.
Yeah.
I might stick around with them just to watch a bunch of that. They also have a bunch of old like Sentai and Tokusatsu stuff that I'm sure people who are more well versed in this world would be excited by. Ultraman's on there, I know, but I know Ultraman's on there, but like I have those Blu-rays because I was like, people like these, I'm just gonna pick up these Blu-rays as they come out. I've still never watched it, but I'll get to it one day. I guess I should also I guess I should also say, like, before we get into this and start talking about the episode, people wondering like, oh, are these some big Tokusatsu fans? And at least on my end, fuck no. I honestly spent the majority of my life like knowing that it exists but not having any interest at all. Even like growing up, I know like Power Rangers was a big thing for like kids my age. Never really watched it. If it wasn't animated when I was a kid, I didn't really care if it wasn't a cartoon. And by the time I started caring about live action stuff, I was a little too old. Monster movies and stuff like that also was like, you know, I would watch it if I was in a group and like I saw a Godzilla flick or two here or there with people and like I thought they were whatever, but like I wouldn't go out of my way to rent a Godzilla movie when I was growing up, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Like,
and I guess carry on.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, for me, like, I'm just thinking about like what my prior experience, because I mean, I'm not, in terms of like it being into Tokusatsu, right now, like Kamen Rider is the only like big series of like the well-known properties that like I'm really, really into and have watched extensively. I think, like, I mean, I remember as a kid seeing, like, Kamen Rider Dragon Knight commercials on, whatever channels that was on, but, never watched that, never watched Power Rangers all that much. My dad is really into Ultraman, so, like, I'm vaguely aware of that, and I played, like, a Godzilla video game once, but, like, otherwise, like, yeah, in terms of actually watching the shows, I've not gone into anything that hasn't been Kamen Rider, at all, so...
Which is weird, too, because I kind of expected you to have more experience in this department than me, but I actually think I might have the upper hand on you, because I went through a weird Guyver phase growing up, which I'm sure I feel like most of you listening to this are going, what the fuck is Guyver? Guyver is well, okay, let me get, I have the Wikipedia article pulled up here. Bio Booster Armor Guyver is a kind of a superhero type thing of this ilk that was originally a manga and then got some anime adaptations, which is honestly more where I learned about it. But actually, the reason that I feel like there's a handful of Americans that know about Guyver, and it's probably through the fact that there was two 90s live-action movies, The Guyver and The Guyver 2 Dark Hero. The Guyver 1 is apparently not that great. I don't remember it. I haven't seen it in years. But it's notable for having Mark Hamill in it, for some reason.
What?
And Guyver 2 Dark Hero is notable for replacing the main character's actor with David Hayter of Metal Gear Solid fame. So...
What?
Yes.
What?
One of David Hayter's earliest roles was the 1994 Guyver Dark Hero, which was a direct-to-video movie that I somehow saw throughout the course of my life. I don't remember how I saw this. It might have been on TV at some random show. But, like, this is kind of a cult classic movie. I've seen this. I saw this a few years ago, and I was kind of surprised by how well it held up for what it is. It's really schlocky, but it's a fun time. If you ever have the chance, track down Guyver Dark Hero. I don't even think you really need to see the first one. I don't really think they're that connected. But it's going for that like tokusatsu thing, but from like a real B-movie Hollywood perspective. It's a fun time. And if you just want to see David Hayter act in a role that isn't Solid Snake, that's a good one to... It's that and the English dub of Gundam 0080 War in the Pocket is just that's David Hayter? Okay. Prior to Metal Gear. So Yeah, but yeah,
Interesting.
other than that, I really didn't have any tokusatsu experience. And then a few years back, I actually went back through, and I was just looking for something to watch. I'm like, I should probably watch the original Godzilla, and you know what? That's a good movie. And I know, like, there's tokusatsu is a wider umbrella term that encompasses a lot of different types of shows and movies and genre. But just like in that overall broader, like, speculative fiction, like Japanese practical effects work type production, I feel like Godzilla is the starting point of my adulthood appreciation for this style of storytelling. And
For sure.
I've wanted to go through and maybe check out some more kaiju stuff later on. I know that those Gamera movies, if I'm pronouncing that right, are apparently phenomenal. I have the Criterion Collection release of that and the Godzilla movies, so at some point in my
Mhm.
life, I'll just go on a marathon of those and see how I feel. But yeah, that
Yeah.
brings us here to Kamen Rider. Unless you have anything else to add before we dive into things.
Oh, so I mean, not real. I mean, just for a bit of context, I haven't watched uh anything beyond, I guess, like in terms of time span. Like Kuga is the oldest Kamen Rider series that I've watched. So um the series or the franchise overall is split into different eras based on the Japanese historical eras of Showa, Heisei, and Reiwa as it is currently in present times. Um and I think going into this, like it for me at least, like part of what I'm going into watching this is seeing where everything started, and how that influenced like a lot of the later series. Because this, as a franchise this big, like it's like all bound to get self-referential, and definitely in some of these first couple of episodes, I'm like, huh. I can see where some of this led into like way later things. So, it's gonna be an interesting experience for me, at least as like a hardcore Kamen Rider watcher enjoyer. Um, but that's where I'm coming from. I don't know. I don't know what you want to talk about specifically. So, but
Yeah, that is a good point though. I'm especially wondering if I'm gonna end up having the Shin Megami Tensei and Gundam thing of going back to the old stuff and being like, the recent stuff is real clown shoes about how it like builds off that, you know what I mean? Um,
yeah, yeah.
I- or like, oh, you took this idea that was really pure and from a place of passion and just like played with it in a way that's real like bad and poorly thought out. I don't know. I always have that. I always feel like I run that risk of going from the middle or like later parts of a long running series and going back to the origin point. Of just
Yeah.
being like, oh, this was a lot better in its original form, and the stuff that came since is kind of maybe not as interesting. But we'll
Oh,
see.
for
We will
sure.
see.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. And we can definitely get into more of that as we go along these first few episodes of Kamen Rider.
yes. So I have a question. Did you write down? So I don't know if you wrote down notes. I wrote down full recaps, which we're going to be going off of. Um, did you write
uh,
down the name of the episodes? I'm just curious about something.
I mean, I have the episode list open right now.
What
So
is it? Is it the one that is like on the Shout Factory thing, or is it like the wiki list?
I have the wiki list.
Okay. What title do they give for episode 1?
So episode 1 of Kamen Rider is The Mysterious Spider-Man.
So that's what it was listed as on Prime Video. And then in the episode it was called the Eerie Spider-Man. So I'm now
Huh.
wondering how much these episode titles are going to differ. Though I think the next two are the same. Or actually, no, they're not. I think the second one is the same both in episode and in the service. And then the third one is different again, but they're like real minor changes. Um, so
Mm-hmm.
let's begin with the recap here. A man named Takeshi Hongo speeds down a rural road on a motorcycle. He stops beside another man, Mr. Tachibana, who is timing him on a stopwatch. They exchange a few words before Hongo speeds off once more to improve his time. We get an uncomfortably close zoom-in on Mr. Tachibana's face as he thinks about Hongo, who reveals to us in the span of like a second that he is prone to acting childish, is a first-rate motorcycle rider, and also a leading scientist at Johoku University's biochemistry lab. Did you notice the university name thing, by the way?
What do you mean by that? It's like...
Okay, I had to look this up because I was confused. This is apparently just a thing, this isn't a translation. The name of the university changes between episode 1 and episode 2, and then the rest of the series just uses episode 2's name onward.
Oh, yeah! Oh, I didn't notice... Well, because... Okay, like... I knew the university's proper name as Jonan University, because specifically, it's actually referenced in Kamen Rider Kuga and Kamen Rider Hibiki. It's like those series reference Jonan University, so I was aware of that, but I did not catch that it was different in the first episode, and that's just a thing. Like, I think I mentally just filled in the blank there without realizing that. That's really funny.
Yeah, as someone who had no idea that this university was like a thing in the broader series, I was like, wait, did he transfer? Like, what? I was so confused. And then I had to look it up, and I found a blog post that was like, yeah, for some reason the first episode, they just called it something else, and they must have changed their mind with episode 2. So yeah, that was weird. As Hongo continues down the road, we see a mysterious / eerie Spider-Man stalking him from the tall grass. Out of nowhere, a gang of motorcycle riders dressed in black and red start to trail Hongo. Believing their sudden appearance to be a racing challenge, Hongo speeds ahead, only to be surprised when a second gang of similarly dressed riders appear from the other direction, trying to go for a pincer attack. With a smirk, Hongo leaps over the oncoming group with his bike. The group seems to lose interest in Hongo and start to ride towards the way he came. Sensing they're up to no good, Hongo pursues them from a distance, using the surrounding forest as cover. It's also incredibly foggy now. I don't know if that you like internalized that when you were first watching it too. I mean, they explain why that is later, but I was just like, damn, this fog rolled in real quick.
Yeah. Yeah. Like
so I know that they only have 24 minutes to work with, but like, man, the one thing that stuck out to me in this first batch of episodes was just very fast transition between scenes, and you gotta be really paying attention when you're watching this show.
No, I did notice that. Like, there's some parts of it that definitely feel pretty compressed. That sort of way. Yeah, I mean, they also have a lot of exposition. Just like in later series, like especially like series like Kuga, like they started taking a more slow approach to like world building and exposition, whereas here, like, they just lay out, like, yep, like, good old Takeshi Hongo, he's super fucking smart and rides the bike real good. Everyone loves him. Like,
I think at some point they drop that he has an IQ of over 600.
Yeah, like, he's super smart, like, just biggest brain dude, which, I mean, like, later on, they do point out, like, yeah, like, it's real convenience that you're just, like, naturally strong and smart at all of this, and the cyborg stuff that you got just made it even bigger and stronger. Like,
yeah. As Hongo watches the riders, a giant spider web captures him, and a trio of women dressed in the same uniform as the riders captures him, cackling along the way. Hongo wakes up chained to a high-tech operating table in a dark laboratory. He's looked over by a group of creepy scientists with green and red face paint. A purple light shines down on him, and an ominous voice welcomes him to Shocker. As Hongo wonders what the hell Shocker is, the show cuts to a monster's hand turning on a globe, while the narrator helpfully explains that Shocker is an evil organization whose influence reaches all over the world.
Yep.
They want to alter human beings and use them as pawns to take over the globe.
They sure do.
That was just getting right into it. Like you said, a lot of exposition just right up front. They really want to get into that monster of the week thing right off the bat, it seemed like. So,
Yeah.
The narrator has a lot of lifting to do in this show, is something I noticed a lot, too.
Mm-hmm. Like, I think it's real interesting in that, like, I mean, this is a series that, like, was worked on directly by the mangaka Shotaro Ishinomori. I hope I'm saying that right.
And he was the one who did the manga of Kamen Rider as well, right?
Yeah. So, like, he came up with the original concept for the show, and then made the manga of that, I believe. So, like, I think it's just real interesting how, like, I can kind of draw a parallel between, like, the narrator here and, like, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, for example.
I was thinking of JoJo's a lot while watching this.
Yeah. Like, just the narrator, like, having to do, as you say, the heavy lifting for all of this and just interjecting, like, constantly. It really has that JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, or, like, just general, like, manga style presentation of having, like, text that is supplementary to, like, actual dialogue, which I think it's pretty interesting, considering that the more modern series take more cues from, like, you know, like, dramas and live action television more so than, like, its manga origins, I guess. So,
yeah,
I think that's sort of interesting.
I should also say too, this is not my first Ishinomori joint. I also have some experience with Cyborg 009, which I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce that. But or Cyborg 9, whatever way you're supposed to go with that. But yeah, I've never read that to completion or got super far into any of the animated adaptations of that. So, but he's also responsible for Super Sentai as well.
Yep.
So yeah, very
also
influential
known as Power Rangers. Yeah, you know, giga influential. Like, all the kids here love their Power Rangers, and they would not have that without him. So, yeah, I'd say pretty big, even if maybe not everyone knows his name. So,
yeah. Oh, funny enough, I'm scrolling through his fucking Wikipedia article. Araki, creator of the long-running series JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, credits Ishinomori as one of his main influences in the manga industry. Well then,
there you go.
That makes a lot of sense. So,
yeah, that makes sense.
There's definitely stylistic stuff, especially in early JoJo's, where it's a little more going for that typical of the time boys action manga type storytelling that you can definitely feel here as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Where was I at? Okay, there we go. The ominous voice explains to Hongo that he was kidnapped because Shocker wanted to experiment on a person with strong athletic capability as well as an IQ over 600.
Yeah,
Hongo protests.
So convenient. Like,
yep, just hyper competent protagonist to the max. Perfect human being. As Hongo protests, we're told it's been 1 week since he was captured and he is now a cyborg. The scientists gas and shock Hongo as they explain to him his newfound power, the power of wind, and that the only reason he still feels pain is because his mind hasn't been through alteration yet, but that once it is, he will be completely controlled by Shocker. Just as they're about to begin the mind alteration process, sparks fly from the scientist's control panel and an alarm activates. Another scientist rushes in to say that the facility's generator has been destroyed. The scientists rush out to find the culprit. And I gotta say, too, from what I vaguely remember of the manga, this was pretty much beat for beat the manga. I believe it starts to differentiate a little bit around here, though I know that the antagonist of this episode is also the main antagonist of that first little bit of Kamen Rider, the manga, as well.
Mhm.
But this was all very familiar to me, and also reminded me of Kabuto, not Kabuto, but Build,
Build. Yeah.
with the experimentation stuff and people turning into monstrosities strapped down to weird shit in a lab.
For sure. Yeah, like for a bit of context too, like Kamen Rider Build was explicitly written with the idea of being more of a throwback series to some of the older Showa era shows like the original Kamen Rider. So there's a lot of elements of that, like experimentation and other things that harken back to like these sorts of original themes, which in the context of some of those later series in the Heisei era, there's definitely a lot of series like X-Aid, for example, that stray very far from like what the series was originally about. So Build was sort of their way of trying to rein that in for some of the older fans, which yeah, you can definitely see. But
it is interesting to me anytime something like this, and I mean, I'm a Gundam fan, so Gundam has the same problem.
Mhm.
Anytime that these anytime a franchise that is essentially at its core a thing for babies has to like reconcile with the fact that there's also this like old group of diehard Vanguard people who like need to be appealed to as well, and trying to find a way to desperately balance that in any way possible.
Oh yeah. Oh
What a
yeah.
balancing act.
It sure is. Like, it's real funny, like, considering how, like, the series and franchise as a whole now is more for the, uh, infamous, toy marketing that they always try to do with all the different forms and stuff. It's like, hey kids, look at this cool pull-up sword thing. Don't you want to buy it? Like, don't you think Kamen Rider whatever is like the coolest guy on earth? Buy his figure. Like,
Yeah, and you know what? I guess we can get into that a little bit later. But I was these weren't as toyetic of episodes as I thought they would be in terms of
oh yeah, absolutely.
that sort of thing.
Like definitely like it, like as you say, like it has like the boys manga action show element to it that's still still appealing to that demographic, but it's not nearly as focused on like selling you like manufactured toys or anything like that.
Yeah, like,
or,
this feels like the more like typical, like this would sell kids a bunch of figures rather than a shit ton of weird accessories that get like a creepy amount of focus time. And some of the later stuff we've seen.
For
I shouldn't
sure.
say creepy, but just excessive, I'll say.
Yeah. Pervasive.
Anyways, Hongo... Pervasive, that's a good word. Hongo breaks out of the chains binding him to the table as a man walks into the room. This is Dr. Midorikawa, a man Hongo thought was missing. Dr. Midorikawa explains his disappearance was also due to Shocker. Midorikawa suggests they escape by jumping through the ceiling, which Hongo thinks is a really stupid idea, but then the doctor has to remind him that he's a cyborg now, he can deal with it. They jump through, it breaks apart like tinfoil, as Hongo leaps with the doctor in his arms. The scientists rush back in, realizing they fucked up bad, and they're upset.
Mm-hmm.
The two escape from the facility on Hongo's motorcycle, which, frankly, very kind of them to just leave that out front.
Yeah, very convenient. I feel like this first episode, the theme really is just conveniences. Like, wow, isn't it great that Takeshi Hongo is so strong and smart? Perfect for Shocker. Like, let's just strap him down. Oh man, we didn't brainwash him yet. He's gonna break out. Oh shit, his motorcycle.
I was really a big fan of the fact that they're like, you're gonna be the ultimate weapon. They're explaining to him how strong he is, and then they leave him in a room alone, and his first thought is, I could probably break these chains, and he's right. Like, they didn't really think that one through. Anyways, as the two escape from the facility on Hongo's motorcycle, a group of Shocker agents and the mysterious / eerie Spider-Man watch from the foliage. Spider-Man wiggles his fingers as if casting a spell. And by the way, I want everyone watching this at home to know that this looks nothing like Spider-Man. But if it is more entertaining for you to envision this as Peter Parker, please do so.
Yeah.
Anyways, the Spider-Man wiggles his fingers as if casting a magic spell, causing a sudden patch of fog to roll in and explaining the fog that occurred earlier during Hongo's capture. The motorcycle collides with a giant spiderweb, causing him and the Doctor to fall off their bike. Honestly, the Doctor seems perfectly fine here, actually, but Hongo goes flying off of a cliff.
Yeah.
This is very, very funny looking. The women from before show up again. Every time these ladies appear, they are always surrounded by weird, like, giggling. And then they drag the Doctor back to Spider-Man, who says that all who betray Shocker must die, including the Doctor's only daughter, Ruriko. As the Spider-Man's hands reach for Midorikawa's throat, the group of Shocker agents suddenly turn their attention to the top of a nearby hill. Standing at its apex is none other than Kamen Rider himself, wearing his iconic scarf and bug helmet. Do we want to stop here and talk about just the actual, like, suit designs for both our Spider-Man monster here and Kamen Rider?
Yeah. So we can definitely tell that there's some parts of the production that have not received as much budget as some of the later series, to say the least. It's very humble beginnings.
I gotta say, though, I think of the three enemies of the week that we've seen so far, I think the spider had my favorite of the three designs that we've seen.
Yeah. I'm pulling up their images right now just to remind myself what they look like. Some of them you don't get a clear look at.
That's actually something I want to bring up too. This show, well, I guess we can talk about this later because this is more of a thing later, but you don't get a good look at them sometimes, actually, and I think that was very intentional.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I liked the Spider-Man the most of our animal-themed enemies that we have.
Yeah, no, I think I agree, looking at the images, yeah. Like, I think it has a pretty distinctive look.
I mean, they all look like a dude in a suit, but I think he looks the least like a dude in a suit. And that's kind of impressive considering I think he's the one who spends the most time in daylight of the three.
Yeah.
So good on them for pulling that off. I overall, like, I mean, this is one of those things where I feel like I don't have a strong opinion on the Kamen Rider outfit because, like, I look at it and I'm like, yep, that's the Kamen Rider outfit. Like, it's just like, I'm not even a Kamen Rider dude, and I'm just like, yeah, that's what Kamen Rider looks like, you know? It's just that
yep, that's Kamen Rider.
The only thing I guess I don't like is the weird teeth thing. Like, it has weird jagged teeth on the helmet. Kind of.
Like the toothy fronts of the mask.
I don't know if I care for that, but other than that, I like the look.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. Like, I think I like the toothy mask motif more on, like, some later designs, I think. Like, I think some of those do it a bit better. But I like it, like, I think one of my favorite elements of the Kamen Rider design in general is the eyes, and that's, like, it's actually really interesting. The creator, Ishinomori, I believe he said of the eyes that the eyes are designed partly to convey, because if you look at, like, the bottom of the eyes, there's, like, the black sections, and that's supposed to represent crying, and that ties into, like, that sort of theme that you wanted to invoke throughout, of, like, the idea of fighting even though you don't want to. So I like that. But I think my more the more interesting part of that is that, like, this is also a practical design in that the eye holes, or the eye sockets, for actually seeing out of the suits are in the tier marks.
Oh, you know,
the mask.
that makes sense. I'm looking at it now, that I can see how that works, yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, so I think from, like, both a creative and, like, practical production standpoints, like, I think that's very clever. But yeah, in general, like, one thing that I really like about Tokusatsu from watching all of these, like, different series is just how they use their suit parts and just the overall design. Because I like designing video games and fiction and other sorts of, like, media stuff. So I think there's a lot of interesting things that they do in how, like, they construct things both in a creative and practical sense.
Yeah.
And this is just one of many things that I kind of notice and appreciate throughout. But yeah, it's good.
And I think the scarf is really cool. I like the scarf a lot.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like, love the scarf.
I don't know how safe it is to ride a motorcycle with a scarf. That would give me so much anxiety. I don't think you're supposed to do that. I don't know. I've never been on a motorcycle once in my life. Actually, that's not true. I think I've been on one once, but that was a long time ago. I was like 13.
Yeah, but to be fair to the creators, they did not have the most uptight motorcycle safety in check for much of the series.
We'll get to that later.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, we should both say there is one thing we talked about doing before we started recording is talking about what we know about this series before we start. And I think the only thing we do know is that there is a point where our lead man here gets taken out of commission for a little bit because of there was a motorcycle accident, right? That was it.
Yep.
Yeah. So we'll get to that. I don't even know when that happens in the show. I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I'm sure it'll be very easy to tell when that happens.
Oh, so, yeah, I believe it comes honestly not even that far into the series overall. I think it's like 10 episodes from now.
Oh shit, really? Okay, that's faster than I expected. Well, I guess they learned their lesson fast. So, going back to the recap, Kamen Rider flips into action, quickly beating the Shocker agents and Spider-Man, causing them to roll down a small hill. This is a very hilly area, by the way. This is like, I thought, I was trying to get a good look at the landscape here. I kind of rewound a bit, and like, I wouldn't call this mountainous terrain necessarily, but like, this is a very hilly area. A lot of steep inclines. Just as quickly as he flipped into action, the Kamen Rider flips out of the action, leaving the Shocker cronies bewildered, staring into the woods. Something I noticed, actually, about this scene that I'm kind of curious about, if it was intentional, or if this was something that people would have thought at the time. Just watching this episode, and if you don't know anything about what this show is, or what it's about beforehand, I don't even think necessarily that there's a good... I think there's a good chance someone could watch this and not realize that the Kamen Rider is Hongo.
Yeah.
Like, like, the last we saw, he fell down a cliff, and then next thing you know, this Bugman is standing on top of a hill, and then beats up these guys and saves the doctor. I think it's very easy for someone to watch this and go, oh shit, the main character showed up, or so, you know, especially if you're younger.
Like, I think, like, the biggest thing that's, like, pretty interesting from, like, a going back perspective is that, like, later series are really big on the henshin transformation sequences. Here, like, he just appears as the Kamen Rider.
Yeah, I thought about that too. Like, there are times where it just cuts to a scene, he's just transformed already. And what we do get of the transformation sequences seem kind of fleeting at times. That surprised me too. That was very downplayed compared to later stuff.
Yeah. Like, I'm thinking that, like, maybe later on in the series, like, they start doing it at some points and maybe it catches on. Like, because, I don't know, the viewers like it or something.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, kids like big, elaborate transformation stuff, like going back to Sailor Moon, like all that, all fucking any combination sequence in any mech thing. Kids love that shit.
Yeah, for sure. Like, it's definitely interesting seeing this as like, oh, like the series mainstays was more of like an evolutionary process rather than baked in at the very start.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool.
Meanwhile, at the Johoku University School of Literature,
I think you mean Jonan.
Jonan, yeah. I'm gonna call it Johoku for the rest of this recap. I'm not gonna go back and retcon the summary. Ruriko Midorikawa walks through a gate and is surprised by her friend Hiromi. I almost said Hitomi. They continue walking as we watch the two girls from what is clearly a stalker's point of view, while Ruriko asks Hiromi if she's seen anyone following her around the past 3 days. As they exit the scene, in fact, someone has been watching her the last 3 days, as a mystery man uses a communicator device to speak with Spider-Man and plan a kidnapping. As a group of strange men surround the girls and terrify them, Mr. Tachibana pulls up in his car and tells them to get in. Turns out he's their boss at the cafe that both of them work at. When the two tell them about their stalkers, he doesn't know what they're talking about and tells them to stop playing pranks on their elders, as he didn't see anyone else when he pulled by near them. That was funny. I wasn't expecting Mr. Tachibana to show up like this, but I like how there's a web of character connections going on here.
Yeah, for sure.
I need one of those Japanese relationship flowcharts that's in every magazine before something comes out to explain how all these characters know each other and feel about each other.
Right?
Tachibana also tells Ruriko that her dad has been found, giving her a piece of paper with his whereabouts. As Ruriko and Tachibana walk through the door of the cafe, which has the word amigo on it, shocker agents jump down from the ceiling and attack them. As they grab Ruriko, they realize it's actually just Hiromi in Ruriko's clothing. The real Ruriko drove off in Tachibana's car to drive off to the warehouse to find her dad. I thought that caught me. I wasn't expecting that one, to be honest. I did think it was really weird how Ruriko and Tachibana get dropped off, and I'm like, did they just let Hiromi take the car? But then the scene went on. I was like, oh, they got me just like they got the shocker agents.
Yeah.
When the show for children tricks you too, clever. So. Unfortunately, a tiny spider tracking device is stuck to the back of the car, and Spider-Man overhears her reading the directions. At the warehouse, Dr. Midorikawa starts to doubt if he's doing the right thing, and Hongo reassures him that he is the only one who can reveal Shocker's evil intentions to the rest of the world. As Ruriko arrives at the warehouse, Hongo turns the faucet of a sink on and accidentally snaps it clean off. Realizing he's having trouble controlling his own cyborg strength, a plot thread that has not inconvenienced him in the rest of these 3 episodes, actually. He reflects on his altered humanity. Though maybe it did. There's one scene we'll get to at the start of episode 2 that I was confused about something, but we'll get to that when we get to episode 2. Hongo asks the doctor if he's going to remain a cyborg forever. Dr. Midorikawa apologizes, revealing to Hongo that he was the one who recommended Hongo's capture to Shocker, because this was all a plan by Dr. Midorikawa to get Hongo cyborg powers so that Hongo could break both of them out of the lab.
Oh no, and that's why they were looking for a very specific man with very specific IQ.
Yep. Ruriko overhears her father arguing with someone she doesn't seem to recognize from the corridor leading to this room. Suddenly, webs descend from the ceiling and strangle Dr. Midorikawa. As Hongo and Ruriko rush to help him, the Spider-Man shoots out a poison dart out of his mouth from the shadows, disintegrating the doctor down to nothing but foam. Do we want to talk about the foam? I want to talk about the foam.
Yeah, I also want to talk about the foam.
So, we see this little dart shoot out, and close up on it, stuck into the doctor's body. We then see the other 2 characters back away so that we can get a shot where the doctor's body, again conveniently in the shadows, starts to like glow kind of, and then becomes a skeleton, and then becomes real foamy, and then we get a close-up of foam bubbling inward, like imploding onto itself from like on like a wooden floor. Now, the way I realized that they probably did this is they probably got something that like expands like foamy wise or whatever, like a practical effect thing, and then they just reversed the footage to make it look like it was like shriveling up, which is a good way to do that.
Oh, was it like I know like this is such a common like tokusatsu like film technique of just reversing footage to get the effect that you want, like. And, like, a big prominent example of that, which you'll see in later episodes, too, is when characters jump real high, when in reality it's just the actors jumping backwards down a really high point.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Some instances of this are more noticeable than others. And I feel like, definitely, like, the more modern series have gotten pretty good at hiding that sort of like the feeling of reversal.
I didn't catch any of the jumping stuff, but yeah, that makes sense. Hongo tells Ruriko that it isn't safe here and they need to leave, but Ruriko thought that Hongo was the one who killed her father and doesn't trust him. The Spider-Man grabs Ruriko and rushes outside with Hongo giving chase. We see the Spider-Man running with her in tow through a series of incredibly awkward jump cuts. I don't know if you noticed that too. That was real weird. And I don't know if the Spider-Man couldn't run well in the suit, especially when carrying another person. But it's like he runs forward 3 steps and then it jump cuts to him running the next 3 steps and then it jump cuts again to him running the next 3 steps. It was really jarring to watch.
Yeah, there's definitely interesting editing choices.
Like I feel like I can't turn off my video editor brain sometimes, and first of all I'm gonna say I edit bullshit like YouTube clown shoes gaming shit on the internet. Like what the fuck do I know about editing any TV show? But in my mind I was like, what I would have done is if I had to do it that fast, I would have done, like, a bunch of cuts back and forth where it was him running, and then cut to Hongo, like, running, and then him running, then cut to Hongo running again to, like, kind of break it up a bit more. But that could have maybe been just as bad in its own way. I don't know.
Yeah. I feel like, in general, like, there's several, like, editing choices. Like, for example, there's several instances in the show where, like, when the Kamen Rider is surrounded by shocker agents, that the camera will start to wobble and like go upside down, topsy-turvy. Like
they were doing some avant-garde college film shit with the camera rotating in these first 3 episodes, honestly. There's one where it's like where it like starts to do like a pendulum swing. Looking down at a fight scene, and I was like, what effect are you trying to communicate here? Because this is just kind of making me sick. Like, I'm not getting anything out of this.
Like, I feel like their intent, like, most of the time is to convey, like, unease when dealing with, like, the shocker enemies. But as you say, like, some of those are just, like, kind of just disorienting. Not in a good way.
Yeah. Let's see. The Spider-Man leaps from the balcony onto a truck, and Hongo gives chase on his motorcycle. Hongo transforms into the Kamen Rider while riding on his motorcycle and takes a detour to cut in front of the truck's path. When the Spider-Man sees Kamen Rider standing on the road ahead, he leaps down from the truck. A group of shocker agents with steel combat staves that just, like, magically appear in their hands like keyblades. I want to note too.
Yeah.
Like they're all unarmed and then suddenly they summon staves in their hands. It's incredible. They surround Kamen Rider, but he makes quick work of them. The Spider-Man takes a pot shot at the Kamen Rider, but accidentally hits a shocker agent who also disintegrates into foam, using the same effect that we saw earlier. Which I also think they cut to the foam on a wooden background, even though they're outside now, which is also very funny.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure it was like the same footage. Like they were really cutting corners.
Listen, they only got so many foam bubbles.
Yeah. Oh man, Ishinomori-san, we're running out of foam. Whatever shall we do?
Kamen Rider and the mysterious / eerie Spider-Man fight, almost rolling down a cliff and into a reservoir. Okay, I want to point out a specific shot here that actually flabbergasted me and impressed me in a genuine, cinematographic way. Cinematographic way. I can't.
I don't know either.
Yeah. There is a part of this fight where they get real close to the reservoir's edge, and the Spider-Man goes for a fucking lunging cliff towards Kamen Rider, towards the cliff's edge. And I, jaw dropped, if this dude overshot, he would have gone careening hundreds of feet down into this reservoir.
Yeah.
But I did notice, so that was actually a very good camera placement trick, because there is a different shot when they're rolling around. Very quickly you can see that you actually get a peek over the cliff's edge, and because of how the camera was pointed in that scene where he did the kick, you can't see that it actually isn't a sheer drop-off into the reservoir. There's actually a lower platform he would have fell down to, and there's a lot of leg room there. He would have been completely fine. He just would have fell down a bit. But the way they shot it was genius, because it looks like if this dude fucked up the stunt, he was just dead.
Yeah,
my jaw dropped. I was like, oh,
I didn't even register that, but that's cool.
Yeah, that blew my fucking mind. Spider-Man begins to climb up a wall using his webbing, which is now red for some reason. But Kamen Rider meets him at the top with a mighty jump. They exchange blows, and Kamen Rider finishes his foe off with a leaping kick to the face. Is this technically the first Rider kick, even though he doesn't say the words Rider kick?
I feel like it is. I
think it is.
I mean, even in later series, they don't all say Rider kick. Kabuto does.
Yeah, I was just surprised that we get our first Rider kick, and he doesn't say Rider kick.
Yeah, which, we'll get into the next episode, but, he does say Rider something, which is, probably
in the next
first
two
instances of that, which
actually,
is not
he does
what
say,
I expected.
Yeah, we get a few, we get a few different ones, actually, in the next two, but yeah, first episode, no Rider anything. The Spider-Man also disintegrates into foam. This time, they changed it up a little bit by using that same stock footage of the foam over wood, but they put a little pink filter on it, because this is the boss.
Yes, the boss filter.
Hongo retrieves the unconscious Ruriko and hands her off to Mr. Tachibana, who puts her in his car, and then drives off. Hongo drives off into the distance, sad about Dr. Midorikawa's death, and the fact that his daughter believes him to be his murderer. I then lost my shit as the narrator reveals to us that the villain of next week's episode is the terrifying Batman, to follow up on the fact that we fought Spider-Man.
Yeah!
So you kind of talked about this already with the mask having tears, and how that was a deliberate design decision to convey his, unwillingness to fight, or the depression and the loathing that comes with having to take a stand against evil. This episode ended on a more downbeat note than I anticipated for a show for kids made in 1972. I was kind of taken aback. It's not sure. Dark. I don't want to say it's dark, but it's a little more downtrodden and I don't know, I guess somber of an ending, where our main character is not in a great place here. I was impressed by that.
I think the biggest thing is the fact that I think the show deliberately shows hey, he's the cool Kamen Rider, he's so strong, but it sucks actually. The daughter doesn't like him.
I was kind of surprised that they went the way where she thought he killed him, and by the end of the episode still thinks that, and was like, oh, fuck you. I'm sure, well, yeah, I know they're gonna team up later because of how this batch of episodes ends, but I was surprised that wasn't a given from the jump. They have to work towards that.
Yeah, for sure.
Any other thoughts on episode 1 before I start the episode 2 recap?
First episode. It sets up the premise,
Pretty good.
Yeah, I liked it.
Okay, The Terrifying Batman, episode 2 of Kamen Rider. In the dark of night, a woman drops off a young model named Miho Yamano and tells her not to oversleep, as they have to as they have an early start to the day tomorrow. As Miho walks towards her apartment, she hears a strange cackling and screeches off in the distance. A voice calls out to her, telling her that she has the honor of becoming the next member of Shocker, as she tries to make a run for it. The narrator recaps who Shocker is for the audience. As she enters her apartment, Miho tells herself she was just hearing things, and we get a good Dutch angle shot of the dark hallway. Very, very good. Sometimes the camera work of the show is real bad, but we get a nice solid Dutch angle to just kind of communicate the unnerving situation. I was happy with that. She notices that one of her windows is open, even though that she was pretty sure it was supposed to be closed. A large Batman is hanging upside down in a dark corner of her room. He swoops down and bites her neck. How do you feel about the Batman?
As in, like, in terms of a character and design, just in general.
Just
like,
his little intro here, like the introduction, the design. Though I guess we should say we don't get a good look at his design right now because it is mostly in shadow.
Yep.
This whole episode, a lot of the special effects stuff is in shadow.
Yep. It's very dark, in terms of lighting, that's for sure. So this is kind of interesting in that, like, this is one of those parts where, like, I can kind of feel, like, these early episodes influences on, like, later series, in that, like, I think, like, this, and, like, say, for example, like, the kidnapping of the, Ruriko in episode 1, like, I think, as you pointed out, like, that sort of had, like, a stalker vibe to, like, how that was shot, and, like, similarly here, like, we get, like, a home invasion sort of thing, and I think it's kind of interesting in that, like, Kamen Rider Kuga, which was the, I guess, modern revival of the series after a long dormant period where Kamen Rider just didn't come out.
Yeah, wasn't the series basically kind of dead in the 90s outside of a few films here and there?
Yes. After Kamen Rider Black RX, they had a couple of films that were just one-offs, but no real, like, big series. And so Kamen Rider Kuga was, like, a modern, like, revival. And one thing that they really wanted to do, the producer wanted to really, like, challenge, like, the sort of base assumptions of tokusatsu in general, while also paying tribute to the original series. So, like, a lot of that manifested, I interpret as, like, taking some of these, like, early depictions of, like, the Shocker, like, monsters and agents as, like, you know, like, criminal organization doing criminal things on screen, being all creepy and mysterious and doing things like this, and sort of expanding on that to be more of a, because Kuga is, like, it's basically a police procedural at its core, which like, yeah, like, where most of the, like, all of the monsters in Kuga are basically treated as, like, serial killers, and a lot of, like, the
I want to watch this now.
Hey, you can. It's free. Shit. It's free on Tokusatsu Shout Factory. So
there we go.
Like, yeah, but yeah, no, like, most of the series, like, the Monster of the Week stuff is just like, okay, so there's a monster who is killing a lot of civilians through unknown methods, and a lot of, like, the premise is just figuring out, like, okay, like, how can we track down the monster? What is its motivations and, like, powers and stuff like that? Which, like, I can definitely feel the vibe here, especially later in this episode of, like, like, I wonder what happens to the model. Like, what's the mystery behind the Batman? Like, which I think is cool. I think it's very interesting to see.
I also, here was the spot where I went, oh damn, blood. because I kind of wasn't I wasn't expecting that, and then so here's my emotional journey going through this specific episode. I went, oh damn, blood. I wasn't expecting that in a kid show from like 1971, I think I said. Then I went, well, they're kind of going for a vampire bite thing. Kind of hard to do that without showing a little bit of blood. I shouldn't be surprised. Then the rest of the episode happened, and I went, oh no, they're just gonna go for it.
Yeah, there is splatter in this episode. And, I was gonna say, despite, I think Kuga is, a more mature series overall and more, shall we say, darker in its monster depictions and killings, but it never got, super bloody like this explicitly, or, any of, the edgy Kamen Rider, movies or one-offs that they try to market to adults. So, oh man. I think that, I don't, it's kind of how, JoJo is technically a shonen anime or manga thing, right? And I know I've seen young kids interact positively with JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and that's a bloody as shit series. So yeah,
there's so much torture in part 5. Yeah, that eyelid shit is some of the most uncomfortable I've ever been reading a manga.
Yeah,
it's gross.
I can't tell if this stuff is just cultural differences or something. I wouldn't know.
I feel like it probably is. I think that there's definitely, especially back then, I feel like there's some major differences with what's deemed acceptable in these types of stories aimed at a younger audience.
Yeah, for sure.
Cut to the next morning, Hongo is racing his motorcycle in the Tokyo region qualifiers as Mr. Tachibana encourages him from the sidelines. The narrator reminds us of his intelligence, but this time says he works at Jonan University instead of Johaku University. That's when I stopped the episode and went, okay, I need to Google this shit. What the fuck's going on? Are these subs bad? No, they just changed it. Hongo wins the race, and Tachibana runs over to celebrate with him. Hongo says it's just one more step to participating in a big race in Europe, and Tachibana jokes about him aiming so high. Miho walks over to the pair with flowers in hand. She leans in for what appears to be a kiss on his neck. However, Hongo sees fangs come out of her mouth in his bike side mirror and violently shoves her away in panic. She starts giggling and flailing about like a madwoman, resulting in Hongo slapping her in the face. She attempts to bite him several more times, but then eventually falls over and... I wrote faints. We're going to learn that isn't true in a little bit.
Yeah.
A strange mark appears on her face, kind of looking like the face paint that we saw from the Shocker Scientists and Agents earlier in episode 1, causing Hongo to recognize her as a Shocker experiment. Off in the distance, a man in a dark trench coat, fedora, and face mask social distances ominously in some tall grass. He walks away as he realizes his plan did not work. This is the only time in this episode where this guy looks like that, and it's very funny.
Yeah.
He looks like Stranger Danger guy decided that he needs to take COVID-19 seriously.
Yeah, and he should.
Yeah.
Look what happens to the woman.
We cut to later that night, where Hongo stands in front of Miho's apartment complex. As he states his intention to search for clues about Shocker, he actually references that the model straight up died. Now, he slaps her, and we had the thing in episode 1 where he's like, oh, I can't control my own cyborg strength. And I was like, did he kill her by slapping her? But she's up and about and flailing around, and I thought maybe that... I can't tell if he killed her or if she died naturally because of the weird vampire virus thing inside of her blood at this point. And maybe they left it ambiguous on purpose because they want to give you maybe that possible read that, hey, our main character didn't just accidentally kill someone. But I did not think viewing that scene that he straight up, or that she straight up died until he referenced it right here.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's definitely ambiguous, and I was also like, oh, like, yeah, just knocked her out, right? No, oh,
High body count these
oh,
first. Honestly, high body count these first 3 episodes all around.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
In another apartment, a bloodied woman named Chie argues with her husband about going to the hospital. She tells her husband to run away so that he won't suffer the same fate she has. The Batman speaks with her from the shadows, commanding her to attack her husband. Hongo charges in just as the woman grabs her husband and almost bites down on his neck. The man runs out as Hongo secures Chie. It's quickly revealed that many other members of the apartment have been turned into vampires as well, and Hongo comes face to face with the Batman. Hongo deduces that the Batman is from Shocker, while the Batman chimes in to say, "I'm a human bat."
He sure is.
Yeah. The apartment has been used by Shocker as a testing ground for its new virus, which imbues humans with vampiric tendencies. Vampire people enter the apartment and try to corner Hongo under the Batman's orders. Hongo debates the morality of fighting people who have just been victimized by Shocker, not wanting anyone else to die like Miho did. He jumps off the balcony and transforms into Kamen Rider. At this point, the narrator helpfully explains that Hongo's power of wind is actually the turbine on his belt, and when enough wind causes it to spin fast enough, he transforms into Kamen Rider. Which I'm happy they explained here, because I was kind of curious, like, how is he transforming? Because, like we said, the transformation's pretty downplayed, but that makes sense. And that also explains why the scientist said he had the power of wind, because I was really curious about what that meant in the first episode.
For sure. For sure. And I do like how it ties into, like, him actually being a motorcyclist, and that, like, the wind from the motorcycle actually... Like,
it also gives him a lot of dope as shit excuses to jump off of tall things and fall to the ground completely fine.
True.
They play with it pretty cool. But yeah, he does it a lot by just going really fast on the motorcycle. And that's the closest thing we get to a transformation sequence, is him going fast, and then it just slowly transforms him into the Kamen Rider. Kamen Rider and the Batman fight atop the apartment complex before both go careening off the top of the building. Back at Shocker HQ, a grunt tells the mysterious boss of Shocker about the experiments seeming to run into a problem. The boss explains that the secrets of Shocker will be kept safe due to the human bat's ability to induce auto-hypnosis on his targets. When the Batman goes to sleep, his targets go to sleep as well. Back at Cafe Amigo, which I don't know if that's the name of this place, but it says Amigo out front, and it's a cafe. I'm going to call it Cafe Amigo until we get a proper name. Ruriko and Mr. Tachibana, her boss, argue about Takeshi Hongo's whereabouts. Ruriko believes that he knows where Hongo is, while Tachibana denies knowing anything of the sort. The phone rings, and Mr. Tachibana suspiciously runs over to pick it up before Ruriko can. He tells the person they have the wrong number, and, frustratedly, hangs up. Ruriko tells Tachibana, "Okay, I believe you," and then leaves, but then immediately, as soon as she closes the door, puts her ear to the door as Mr. Tachibana calls back Hongo and tells him to meet him at Jonan University tomorrow. Meanwhile, at Jonan University, Hongo and his colleague Kishimori analyze a blood sample containing the vampire virus. Hongo asks if Kishimori could create a serum to cure anyone infected by this virus, but Kishimori states it's almost impossible that this virus even exists in the first place, making it even less plausible to come up with any sort of cure using their lab. Hongo reflects on this as we see a shot of the vampire people sleeping in a cuddle puddle in the apartment complex. What I want to know, how much of the vampire situation did Hongo explain to this guy? Because the way he's talking, Kishimori knows some people are infected by this.
Right.
Like, I hope Hongo didn't tell him, hey, there's an apartment complex and they're all vampires right now.
Yeah.
Surely he didn't tell him that much.
Yeah, in general, I'm still not entirely sure how much of, like, the outside world knows about Shocker versus not. Like,
yeah, I was confused about that a little bit too, and even beyond that, how much. It took a little bit for me to figure out which people around Hongo knew that he's Kamen Rider versus who doesn't.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I'm still not technically sure if Kishimori knows.
Yeah.
Do you think we'll see more of Kishimori? Do you think he's going to be our resident biochemistry expert?
I don't know. I mean, I could believe it. Like, I could believe that to be a thing. Like, because
yeah, like anytime they need to do sciencey stuff, they go to his fellow colleague. Which also, by the way, I was trying to figure out if he was a professor that he was like going to, that he like took classes under. No, I think he's just literally like another student who just is also really smart.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Yeah. It's colleague.
Yeah. Ruriko and Hiromi follow Hongo back to the cafe. As they follow his trail to their boss's room, he tells the girls that a man ran in saying he was being followed by 2 shady characters and then jumped out the window. Hiromi states that's the man who killed Ruriko's father, and Mr. Tachibana unconvincingly quips that he probably should have stopped him then. This is a good scene. I like this a lot. Ruriko doesn't buy his bullshit for a second. She then follows her boss to the apartment complex and assumes that must be where Hongo lives. This is the vampire complex, not Hongo's home. Which we haven't seen where Hongo lives yet, I don't even think, in these first 3 episodes.
Yeah. He's just out and about. Yeah.
Hongo and Tachibana talk in the hallway about Shocker. Hongo states he wishes to be known as the last victim of Shocker's evil deeds and plans to confine all the vampire people at the university lab until a serum can be created. First of all, I wanted to say, that sounds like a horrible idea. Like, yeah, why don't we just take all of them and put them in the lab of a public university? That'll go great.
Let's quarantine them in the lab. Like, what?
Yep.
Like...
I think they're actually better left in the apartment complex. Like,
yeah, I mean, like, and they don't know how strong, like, the virus or, like, the victims
all it takes for one undergrad to be like, I think it's fucked up you're keeping a bunch of people in cages and then letting one out and then getting bit, and you have a university-wide problem.
Yeah, that's not great. Not great.
So, where was it? Oh yeah, plans to confine all the vampire people at the university lab until a serum can be created. He goes to get the car while Mr. Tachibana keeps watch, and by keeps watch, that means he literally stares at the people who are sleeping, not looking out into the hallway where someone could come up behind him, which is indeed what happens, as we get a POV shot of Ruriko picking up a glass vase and knocking out her boss with a quick blow to the back as one of the vampires appears to awaken. She also doesn't seem to notice that it's her boss, even though that we get a very clear look at who it is, and it's very obviously Mr. Tachibana. Very, very goofy. A lot of POV shots these first 3 episodes, I noticed, too. They're having a good time with that.
For sure.
Ruriko rushes over to the awakening man and asks why Takeshi Hongo did this to everyone in the apartment, which I also thought was very funny. She's just like he had fucking killed my dad. He probably did all this too.
She just assumes that Kamen Rider has all these crazy powers that need no explanation. Oh man, it must be the Kamen Rider. It must be him.
Upon hearing Hongo's name and learning Ruriko's identity as Dr. Midorikawa's daughter, he deceives her by saying he is proof of Hongo's crimes. As she unties the awakening man, he reveals his true form as the Batman and bites her neck. Mr. Tachibana reawakens and Hongo rushes into the room after hearing her scream. The Batman reveals the truth of her father's murder to Ruriko as she grows numb. He tells Hongo that he'll let her live if Hongo listens to his demands. Hongo demands to know proof first that he actually has a serum to cure the vampirism, or else he won't cooperate, despite Mr. Tachibana's protests to any hostage situation nonsense going on here. To prove he can make good on his promise, the Batman summons one of the vampire people and waves a hand over him, causing him to return back to his normal self. Hongo then suddenly realizes that this proves that the serum is already inside all of the affected parties, and he begins to battle the Batman, claiming that he has already won the fight. Both of them jump out the window, and Hongo transforms once more. Kamen Rider throws many Shocker agents off of the apartment's roof, splattering them into a bloody puddle onto the concrete below. Okay, so a lot of blood bombs going off and just puddles splashing down. They reuse the stock footage a lot. My jaw dropped once again. I'm like, oh damn, this got way more violent than I expected.
I'm like I know it's like just like 1971 like goofy like special effects, but still I'm like, Jesus Christ,
yeah,
like,
it's like
he's
really,
going off.
like for reference, it's like a shadowy shot of a concrete floor, and then a real goopy like red blood splatter effect that just like splats, like almost like a giant tomato fell.
Yeah, the tomato
and like
splats.
the camera is located so that you can't see what caused the splat. You just see like the edge of the splat, which is a good way to like hide both the blood bomb they like made to create the effect, as well as like not show the body hitting the floor in the show's fiction. Very, very good practical effect there. But they use this thing a lot. You're going to see this blood splatter a lot this episode. I would not be surprised if the blood splatter comes back. I'm hoping we see more foam and blood splatter. I hope that these are both recurring special effects we will see throughout the series.
Yes.
So, the Batman taunts him, saying that the girl will die. Kamen Rider uses his Rider Throw, using a named move for the first time in the series, to toss the Batman off of the building, reducing him to a bloody pulp on the concrete. This was an even bigger blood effect than the chapter agents got. Back inside, Hongo uses... Oh, yeah, carry on.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, like, it's really weird to me that, like, the first named move in the series that isn't, like, you know, like, in, like, the opening theme, is
him just
Rider...
eating a guy off a building?
Yeah! Like, Rider Throw is just not what I associate the series with in terms of special moves.
Yeah,
so...
he just does a so long a Bowser right off the apartment complex.
Yeah. And tomato splat. Like...
Yeah, tomato splat right on the concrete. I thought it was very funny that he beat a bat by throwing him off a building, because we've seen...
like, you would... I mean, I know they would not have the effects for this, so it's probably a practical thing, but like...
But you can assume he can fly, right?
Yeah, you know? Right?
Like, because we see him in so many different scenes, he's hanging from the ceiling upside down, like a bat, which, like, he got up there by flying like a bat, probably. So, yeah, just him getting thrown off, and it's just very funny.
Like, I would think in, like, a more detailed, like, setting, or, like, if they wanted to get more detailed, like, I can assume that maybe Hongo just broke his bones or something so he couldn't fly or whatever, but I still think, like, it's still pretty goofy. Just, yeet.
The show's violence streak does not end here, as back inside, Hongo uses the severed hand of the Batman to scratch all of the sleeping vampires, curing them of the virus. He basically did the thing you see in a bunch of sci-fi or heist movie with kind of a futuristic high-tech bent to them, where like he's using like a defeated opponent's hand to like it's like any other thing where like someone uses a knocked out dude or like a severed hand to like do a finger scan thing on a door to unlock it. He's basically doing that, but with curing vampirism. While Hongo's innocence has been proven to Ririko, he still runs away, feeling sorrowful because of his cyborg body.
Yep, it sure does suck being the Kamen Rider.
How did you feel about episode 2?
I like episode 2 a lot. Like, I think episode 2 is like, despite me pointing out things, like, I think it's probably like of like the first 3 episodes, the one that I like the most, and maybe that's just because I agree. Yeah, and maybe that's just because of my positive associations with like later series, but in terms of like the like setup and like payoff, like I think it's pretty good.
I really liked what they did with the effect work here, even compared to episode 1. The fact that they don't have to drop so much exposition on you lets the show breathe just a little bit more. And this is where I started to get a sense of like, oh, this is what the show is going to be for the next 98 episodes. As soon as it falls into its mode of storytelling. I like the idea of like, oh, we're going to start these with like maybe being introduced to normal people's lives and how Shocker has fucked them over, and then Kamen Rider comes in and like You know, they tell a story with how Shocker, Kamen Rider, and these innocent people caught in the middle kind of all interact together, still having that same cast of characters kind of building off of one another in terms of like Ruriko and Tachibana and Hongo and all that too.
Yeah.
Liked all that. So, like I said, I think the practical effects here were better, even though I still think the Spider-Man suit looks better than the Batman suit, because like the Batman suit is almost always shown in the dark, and when you do get close-ups on the guy's face, you can so easily see the eye holes of the suit where it's just the dude's face underneath. That kind of took me out. But when it's in the shadow and when he's fighting the people on the roof in the shadow, like it's doing its job pretty well. The blood splatter stuff made me lose my mind, and like it didn't even feel edgy. It just felt, well, I guess it felt edgy, but like it really brought me back to like that Devilman sort of thing of just like going over the top for the sake of it.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think this was the best of the bunch that we've watched so far too. I had a good time with this one. And yeah, again, I was a little surprised that Miho died. I kind of figured she would be a constant throughout the episode. And it kind of, along with the beginning of the next episode, shows that this show is not afraid to introduce someone and have them not survive the episode, which I think is an important thing to communicate early on. So, that you're willing to go there. So, my notepad just scrolled up all the way to the top without me wanting to. There we go, back to episode 3. Episode 3, which on Prime is called Monster, Scorpion Man, but inside the episode itself, inside the episode was called The Monstrous Scorpion Man. A group of Shocker scientists work on a new cyborg, as the narrator explains to us that Shocker utilizes techniques and transplant procedures they learned from Nazi Germany.
Yep. So
I wasn't expecting that name drop.
Yeah, this is the part where, like, this is, like, explicitly the part where they're like, yep, Kamen Rider is anti-fascist, so...
Yes, that's what I was about to go. I was like, yo, is Hongo based Antifa? Let's go.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Yeah, I popped off. I was like, fuck yeah. I'm so down with beating up these... I mean, I've been down to beat up these assholes for the first 2 episodes, but, like, they most explicitly draw the line of, like, yeah, there's all this human experimentation shit has its roots in, like, 1940s Nazi German science. It's like, okay, yeah, these guys all deserve to get this shit just beat the fuck out of them by Kamen Rider. I'm so down.
Yeah, explode in some fucking tomato paste, dude.
We'll get there. This new cyborg that the scientists are working on is known as Scorpion Man. This is when I realized, all of these for a little bit are going to be animal-based people. But then the next one proved the next one's going to be a plant. I'm curious, is Scorpion Man a comic book hero? Let me look. I'm gonna look. Scorpion Man has to be in DC or Marvel. Scorpion Man. Oh, maybe not. Hold on. Scorpion Man, DC Comics. Let's look. There's a Scorpio in comics, but not a Scorpion. Yeah, there's a Scorpion and a Scorpio, but I don't think there's a Scorpion Man in either Marvel or DC. That's incredible. Wow, good job, Kamen Rider. It took 3 episodes, but you got an animal superhero name that wasn't used yet.
Yeah, breaking the streak of all 2 episodes.
Dude, I'm gonna lose my shit if we get a Devilman at any point. Like, I know it won't be that, but, like, I won't be able to not think about it the entire time. My fucking notepad scrolled up again. Hold on, let me keep scrolling down to the recap. I'm so sorry, everyone. Thanks, phone. Okay. To perform their experiments, Shocker has forced many of their captives to do hard labor. A group of captives who were unfit to become cyborgs is told that they were originally going to be executed, but will now be test subjects in a new experiment. The cell door opens as the mysterious Shocker boss informs them from their PA system that they're free to go if they can cross the desert outside of Shocker's secret base in 10 minutes. Exhausted from their overworking conditions and still bound with balls and chains around their ankles, the captives struggle to climb up a sandy hill. As the boss finishes his countdown, he declares that the group will be sentenced to death by man-eating scorpions. So, Scorpions climb out from the sand and shoot tomato juice at the exhausted prisoners, reducing them to puddles of blood that are quickly swallowed up by the sand. Again, doing the thing where it's just like a puddle of blood, and then they reverse the footage of it spreading to like make it kind of sink down or whatever.
Yeah.
I was curious if they were doing something to like. I was curious if what they were doing was like pouring more onto a puddle and then cutting out the part where you could see any of it pouring. But because like if you look at the puddle clip, you can see like a little bit of it bubbling, and I wasn't sure if they like had an underground tube that was like pouring some out, or if they like poured it out from the top and just cut down the drop.
Yeah.
Good effect again. Good effect again.
Yeah, for sure. I can't remember. Did the scorpions look kind of like toys? I feel like
yes,
I feel
they
like
did.
yeah okay, because
they didn't move like a real scorpion would. They just jiggled from side to side as if they were being held by underneath the stand with sticks, which they absolutely were, or strings.
Yeah, that was pretty funny to me.
And then their tails shot out tomato juice at these poor souls who probably got underpaid to be hit in the face by tomato juice in the sandy dunes of this set. Of this location. This wasn't a set.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, like, I'm assuming that, like, this base is not in Japan or something, right? Like, there's no Japanese deserts that I know of.
I think it is, because how else would that one dude later in the episode end up here? Or end up in that hospital? Like, you wouldn't have been able to get between countries, right?
Like, I don't know. Shocker is worldwide. Like,
that's
maybe
true.
They have something.
Well, there's the Tottori sand dunes, which are commonly referred to as Japan's desert, but the climate there is not arid, and it's surrounded by nor is it surrounded by otherwise barren landscape. So I guess there's like sandy areas that you could consider like a desert in common speak, but like scientifically aren't deserts. I'll send you this picture. This kind of looks like the place they had in the episode, actually. I could see this being the place that they... I mean, the real reason it's sandy everywhere is because it was, like, they shot...
Oh, yeah, of course! Of course! Like, it's all based on the famous Tokusatsu quarry film sets that everyone likes to use.
Well, so was that what this... So, I was looking for that because... fucking, there's this one quarry in Japan that is just used for every Tokusatsu thing ever. It is iconic. But I couldn't tell, was that used yet? Could you recognize it? I feel like you'd have a better eye for that than I would.
I mean, I wouldn't know.
Because I thought this episode was all just stuff that was around the beach, because, like, it's a lot of, like, coastal stuff, and, like, I thought they just used the sandy stuff around the, water's edge for this. I wasn't sure.
I mean, that could be the case. I could see that. Like,
yeah.
I think it's also just, like, I haven't watched, like, more variety of Tokusatsu shows to really, like, say for sure outside of a Kamen Rider. So, but yeah, I guess for the purposes of the fiction, we do not know where this base is, other than there is a desert that they push people around. I'm kind of wondering if, like, the worldwide aspect of Shocker is going to come into play at some point. I'm sure it does, because, I mean, they mention, again, that, like, Shocker is a worldwide organization, and, they do mention, oh yeah, Takeshi Hongo's gonna go over to Europe for that big race.
Dude, if we get some Europe episodes, which I somehow haven't heard about, that'd be incredible.
Yeah, right?
And, like, even better if they didn't actually go to Europe, because of, like, that would be ridiculous, and they just, like, film it in Japan but pretend it's Europe. I am so down for that if they end up doing that.
Yeah! Ooh, the forests of France, you know? Like...
Yeah. Like, Mount Fuji is in the background. Like... The mysterious Shocker boss orders Scorpion Man to kill Takeshi Hongo, which Scorpion Man states is his sole purpose in life. He plans on doing this by using an old man who was this man, when everyone was trying to make their escape, it was clear that this man was far weaker than the others, and he was begging the group ahead of him to help him escape as well, and to someone help carry him. But this man actually lucked out by being so far behind, because the rest of the group got turned into paste by tomato juice shooting scorpions, and he was left alive, cowering in fear. So the boss of Shocker orders Scorpion Man to again kill Hongo, and then this old man is going to be used as bait, so that Scorpion Man can entrap Hongo into his dastardly plans. Meanwhile, Hongo and, we get full name here. Takeshi Hongo and Tobei Tachibana is the full name of Mr. Tachibana, are training Hongo's cyborg abilities. Tachibana is impressed by Kamen Rider's remarkable leaping ability and destructive rider kick, which we get our first rider kick here, and it's against a pile of rocks. Well, first named rider kick. I still think that episode 1 was technically the first rider kick, but he says rider kick here as he kicks the rocks for the first time, so... Back at someone's home, I think this might be Tachibana's office, Hongo and Tachibana discuss the power of the Kamen Rider. Ririko comes on in with a portable radio. There's a news report happening stating that actually this answers our question, because I wrote this down. At a nearby peninsula, 10 bodies were recovered but mysteriously vanished with no explanation. The group wonders if this is yet another evil plan set in motion by Shocker. So it was some peninsula somewhere nearby. Hongo takes off to...
Forgot.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, that slipped my mind, so, okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. I don't... it was a hot minute since I watched these, so you know.
Yeah. Hongo takes off to investigate, leaving Ririko behind despite her pleas to come with. She feels genuinely apologetic for accusing Hongo of her father's murder, and now also wants to get back at Shocker because of their evil crimes. As Hongo walks up to a nearby hospital, he sees the old man from the beginning of the episode being led away by a large group of doctors, just way too many doctors, all in the full scrubs and face mask get up. A policeman inside informs Hongo that the man was an escapee from a mental institution who kept referencing something called Shocker, claiming they were trying to kill him. Hongo hops back onto his motorcycle as the policeman starts to laugh about the wacky man he saw, and then is confused as Hongo jets off on his motorcycle. In what is quickly becoming a recurring event, Hongo transforms into Kamen Rider and somehow gets in front of the vehicle he was chasing moments ago, causing them to stop as they see him ominously standing on the road ahead. This has happened multiple times now, where there's gonna be a vehicle chase, and then it just cuts to villains looking surprised, then counter shot to the open road ahead, and Kamen Rider just ominously standing off in the distance, blocking their path.
Is this the part where he starts running towards them?
Yep! This is the part where Kamen Rider rushes into battle at superhuman speed, rushing towards them with the funniest, again, just doing the most ridiculous, fast-paced, jump cut editing to make it, look like he's running ridiculously fast. It looks so funny. I love it so much.
Yeah.
This episode has some weird shit in it, dude, but we'll get to it later.
Oh, yeah.
The Shocker agents all get out of the vehicle as he runs towards them, and he jumps on top of their vehicle and states his intention of freeing the captive. They battle him for some time before Kamen Rider grabs the old man and rides off into the distance. The Scorpion Man glares at them from behind a rock. Hongo takes the old man, Mr. Ito, to a seaside hotel as the Scorpion Man lurks about outside. We see his shadow. Mr. Ito doesn't seem to remember much, as Hongo interrogates him, asking what he knows. Interrogates is maybe a strong word, I don't know why I wrote that. He's basically asking what information he knows about Shocker, but Mr. Ito's like, I don't know, man, they just took me. We continuously see the shadowy figure of Scorpion Man enter the building and close in on their location, walking through the lobby, through some hallways. But the effect is kind of killed because we keep seeing him in shadow, but it's very clear that the director was like, hey man, we gotta show off your cool scorpion claw hand. And he keeps doing these weird hand motions that just make him look like he's a dweeb. I don't know how else to describe it, but like he's trying to be like slow and menacing and methodical and like creepy, but like he just looks like he's like he just looks like he doesn't want to keep his hand still. He looks like a little kid playing pretend. It's very funny. They really want you to know he has a claw hand. Hongo tackles an intruder inside their dark hotel room. Mr. Ito turns on the lights and reveals that it isn't actually Scorpion Man, as the audience has been led to believe. It's actually Hongo's old friend, Goro Hayase. Ruriko walks in as well, following behind Hayase, explaining that her boss told him to bring Hayase along to the hotel to help out the gang. Hayase tells Hongo he'll have his back from now on, as Hongo explains to the other two their history. Hongo and Hayase are racing rivals, but also best friends. Hayase jokes that even though Hongo calls him a rival, he always manages to beat Hayase in races, but just by a hair. This frustrated him so much that he ended up leaving for a little bit to train and learn some new racing techniques in hopes of besting his best friend. So, this is probably pretty obvious. Did you know that this guy was Scorpion Man as soon as this happened?
I'm gonna be real, like, maybe my brain turned off at this moment, but, like, I did not catch that the first watch through, and,
damn,
like, thinking about it, I'm like, man, like, how did they get me? Like, am I just the 12-year-old that they're marketing to? Like, Jesus.
Yes. So, I had two thoughts. One was, oh, this guy's Scorpion Man, and two, I was like, man, I kind of hope maybe that fluke out was real, and this guy isn't actually Scorpion Man, and this dude ends up being, like, Dark Kamen Rider or something, because the idea of Hongo having a racing rival / best friend who ends up becoming, like, an evil rival counter to Kamen Rider, and is, like, the Dark Kamen Rider that's, like, a recurring rival, I was like, yes, please give me a rival character in the show. But I was sadly wrong.
Yeah, no, so this is actually a very interesting point. So Kamen Rider, in terms of, like, the classic Showa series, like, Kamen Rider is obviously, like, the big iconic series for most of that era, but the other biggest, like, series that is also super, super popular is Kamen Rider Black. And part of its popularity is the fact that they actually do capitalize on, like, a sort of, like, rival storyline. Like, similar to what you, like, described. So, like,
I've heard a lot of really interesting things about Black, and I feel like I'd like that show a lot.
Yeah, oh yeah, no, for sure. Like, I want to get that at some point as well. But yeah, I think it's like they had a pretty good opportunity to do something like, as you described, like, here for sure, but they just don't. So
yeah, they didn't go for it. He's Monster of the Week instead. He's not cool enough to be full-time rival, apparently. So I did think it was very good that I did think the transition from we get like a full minute of Scorpion Man lurking about and closing in on their hotel room, and then suddenly they just use that opportunity to introduce a completely new character. Thought that was very funny. I respected that a lot.
Yeah, like, I think what what caught me off guard was just the fact that I didn't put two and two together. That, like, oh yeah, like, the monsters can also transform, because Kamen Rider transforms and uses the same power, so, like, of course.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Something I didn't think about and connect until just now is at the very start of the episode, Scorpion Man does say his sole purpose in life is defeating Kamen Rider, which I think at the time I kind of was like, oh, it's because he's the evil guy and he's obsessed with doing evil stuff. But now, like, looking back, like, no, actually, as we learn more about Hayase, no, that was actually, he really has it out for him here. Suddenly, Hongo spots several scorpions on the ceiling. Again, they look very much like plastic toys that you would get for 5 tickets at your local arcade that spits out tickets if you cheese the skee ball game. Or you play that one thing where it's a light going around a track, and then if you hit it on the jackpot, it spits out like 1,000,000 tickets. Good times, good times.
Yeah.
The Scorpions lunge at Mr. Ito. Hongo and Hayase crush them with their shoes, which looks a little silly. They tell the other two to stay in the room, and then they both rush outside. First of all...
Yeah, this is such a horrible idea!
I thought this was There were so many bad decisions made in the next minute of the show, and this is the start, where I was like...
I know!
Yeah, I would tell them to... I would escort them promptly out of that fucking door. I would not leave them in there. You do not know how many other scorpions are hanging out underneath the bed and the closet. This is a hotel room. There's a lot of places for scorpions to hide.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, at least if you take them, like, even if there are scorpions outside or something, like, at least you'd have, like, a Kamen Rider to defend you. You know, like, I feel like between this and, like, the last episode of, like, oh, we're gonna just move all the victims to the university, like, for a guy
Hongo's not the brightest.
Yeah, he has
strategy.
He has a real high IQ, but not enough intuition, I think.
Yeah. Listen, he's used his smarts up until now for biochemistry. He doesn't know anything about warfare.
Yeah.
So, Hongo and Hayase then rush out into the hallway of the hotel and then decide to split up and go in separate directions, which I also thought was a horrible idea. Hayase might be a good racer. He's also just a normal fucking dude. He's not a Kamen Rider. Why would you leave your buddy alone like that? Whatever, he must have a lot of faith in him. A group of the mysterious shocker women appear. This time there's 4 instead of the usual 3, I noticed, though. And they begin to walk towards him in a scene that feels very fetishy, as it zooms in on their legs and the fishnets that they're wearing.
Yeah, it was very, very, like, spicy.
I am so curious what's going on with these ladies, because there is something happening here. They've shown up a lot, and they're never fought. They just, like, ominously giggle and seem to have some weird sort of power or influence over other shocker agents, and seem to be up to no good. I'm curious what happens as we learn more about them over time. I'm sure that Hongo will probably take them out one by one over the course of the next 96 episodes, or I guess 95 episodes. We did 3 this time. Oh yeah, I should probably clarify too. We're doing 3 episodes an episode of this podcast, by the way. Maybe we'll go more or less depending on how it feels, but I feel like so far, 3 episodes have been a pretty good pace.
For sure.
So, Hongo doubles back around, not wanting to deal with the ladies, but then is surrounded by hissing shocker agents. I don't know if they're trying to do a scorpion sound effect type thing. I assume that's what they're going for.
Maybe.
They start to fight, and this is also where we get the scene where the camera goes upside down for no real discernible reason as Kamen Rider fights the shocker agents.
And, like, they roll around to, like, balls too at some point, right? Like, I don't know if it's
that
like
comes later.
Scene.
That's not here
that
yet.
Comes later.
That comes later.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Like,
so I also want to describe for everyone who's maybe listening and didn't watch this along with us, when I say the camera turns upside down, I don't mean there's a cut and then suddenly you're watching an upside down fight scene in a hallway. I literally mean that there's a sideways shot of, like, I guess it's not exactly sideways, it's kind of at an angle, but, like, there's a shot, like, just a normal-ass shot of Kamen Rider fighting off shocker guys, and then the camera starts to slowly tilt clockwise until it's completely upside down, and then it just stays like that for 20 seconds as the fight scene continues, and then it cuts and it's back to normal. It's so fucking weird. I don't know why they did that. What is that supposed to communicate?
I know.
So
strange.
As the fight continues, Ruriko notices that more scorpions have broken through the hotel room's window and are making their way inside. Mr. Ito attempts to pull a Hayase and Hongo and attempts to crash them with his shoes, but he gets squirted on with the tomato juice, turning into a bloody stain on the floor as Ruriko screams. Hongo hears this, and he fights his way back to the room. However, Ruriko is nowhere to be found. He looks outside the broken window, and he sees Hayase outside in the parking lot. Hayase tells him Ruriko was taken away in a car by Shocker, and that he is going to chase after them on his motorcycle. Hongo smiles, agrees, and then makes his way down and gives chase as well. Instead of stopping the car right away, Hayase convinces Hongo, as they're riding on their bikes following the vehicle, to tail them back to the secret Shocker base so that they'll know where it is actually located. However, they don't go back to a shocker base. Surprise, surprise. Ruriko is led inside a building as Hongo and Hayase climb onto the roof, only for Hayase to fall through a skylight and into a room full of shocker agents. Hongo drops down to defend his friend and begins to fight the shocker agents, telling Hayase to save Ruriko, who has been bound. Hongo asks the shocker agent who their commander is, as he has noticed shocker agents typically don't act on their own. There's usually someone calling the shots underneath them, or above them. The agent laughs and then looks over to Hayase. Hongo, in surprise, looks over as well, and Hayase grins, revealing that he is in fact Shocker Commander, Scorpion Man. Hayase tears off his face to reveal Scorpion Man's face underneath, then proudly states he joined Shocker on his own terms so that he could finally defeat Hongo. A voice calls out to Hongo, telling him to look for the scorpions nearby. So, I thought the show was going to do more with this. Was that Hayase's voice warning Hongo? That was my interpretation of this.
Oh, I don't know. I guess I didn't think of it at the time.
I couldn't tell, but my read on that was, there is a little bit of Hayase inside who cares and is trying to defend Hongo and tell him, look out, there's scorpions behind you. But I could be wrong. Someone, if you know, down in the comments, let me know.
Yeah.
Hongo takes this opportunity to grab Ruriko and then jumps out of the building again through the ceiling. Outside, Ruriko runs off while Hongo begs Hayase to snap out of Shocker's control. Scorpion Man sends his agents in to attack, and Hongo transforms into Kamen Rider and fights back. The Scorpion Man and his underlings begin to roll into combat as Kamen Rider leaps away towards the beach. Literally, there is, so this is just another, Kamen Rider fight scene on a hill where he's, tossing people and they're rolling down a hill. Cuts to people, getting tossed off and, falling down an incline or whatever. And then suddenly Kamen Rider starts to run away, and then we get a shot of all the Shocker agents and Scorpion Man rolling up into, a fetal position, and then just, or not even really fetal position, more like they're trying to, actually do, a proper-ass roll with, their, hands behind their head, if I recall, and they just start rolling.
Yeah, like Sonic!
Kamen Rider. Yeah, like Sonic. But in the goofiest way possible, and it looks a lot slower than actually running, even though they try to do the jump cut thing again to make it look like it's a lot faster than it is.
Yeah.
Kamen Rider manages to throw the Scorpion Man into the sky. However, the Scorpion Man is equally as graceful and lands on top of a rocky outcropping. He gives a hand signal to his minions, who then comically run behind a rock and then burrow themselves underneath the sand.
Yeah! And
I lost it. This was so funny.
Oh my god, I am not sure what the strategy is for these Shocker agents.
I don't even know what they're trying to accomplish here, actually. It doesn't seem like they're really moving around all that much. I think they're technically supposed to be, but they clearly couldn't show that.
They don't have any, special weird powers, in the ground or anything. They just go into the dirt.
Yeah, as far as we know, these dudes just like to hiss a lot and then roll around, even though that's clearly not a good idea, and then burrow underneath sand and then just, wiggle about. Kamen Rider, not falling for this bullshit, uses his superhuman perception to jump on each of the burrowed Shocker agents, stomping some of them with his feet, and going for aerial punch strikes, landing on them with his fist for some of the others. As he hits each of them, or lands on each of them with his blows, their heads pop out of the sand suddenly, and it seems like they go unconscious. However, they then disintegrate into blood, which is then swallowed by the sand, similar to the effect shown at the beginning of the episode when the captured people were, suffered the tomato juice from the man-eating scorpions. Last paragraph. Kamen Rider and Scorpion Man leap at one another. Kamen Rider uses his Rider's Scissors technique to grab Scorpion Man with his legs and send him crashing down to the sand below. Hongo and Ruriko ride off towards the distance on the beach, with absolutely zero time given to showing Hongo's reaction to just killing his best friend.
Oh yeah. That was what I was going to comment at the very end, absolutely no remorse here shown by Hongo. I have no idea if they're gonna go into the next episode, but
I hope they do. But so here's my thing. I'm torn because on one hand, I feel like knowing this character as he's been developed these past 3 episodes, I feel like he probably is going to feel really bad about that. And also, it was this dude's fucking best friend and, like, friendly rival. But then there's also a quip he makes during the fight at one point where he's like, I'm only going to tell you one more time to stop this Hayase before this gets real. And then he just is like, no, I'm going to keep attacking. So then it's like, well, maybe he just dealt with it there. But yeah, like literally the episode goes from Scorpion Man falling to the ground, disintegrating into a bloody mess, and then Kamen Rider rides off with Ruriko on the beach, and they both look pretty happy, actually.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, just no moral dilemma. Like, yep, he did a bad thing. We stopped him.
I at least want just a reference to Hongo feeling bad next episode. I hope we get something, or else that's going to be a little silly. Rest in peace, Hayase. You could have been a cool rival Kamen Rider in another writer's hands, but you're just a dead Scorpion Man now.
If only you came, like, a couple decades later!
Yeah. I think the Scorpion Man outfit is by far the worst of the 3 we've seen. I think it looks real bad. The claw hand looks so dumb. It doesn't look like it clearly looks like a glove. Like both that and like his actual glove look like gloves that have been padded out, and like it looks real, like it looks like a foam finger kind of in some shots. The face, even worse than the Batman's face. You can tell that it's just a dude in a suit with like the face being clearly visible underneath. At least with the Batman thing, I felt like they did a little bit of a better job covering it up, but here I just didn't think that the suit was that particularly great. I think in general the effects of this episode didn't win me over as much as episode 2, which I thought was pretty phenomenal for what it was. But like here I think a lot of it's in the daytime, so that doesn't help, but like I thought that the shocker agents here were just like kind of goofier. The Scorpion thing didn't work with them hissing and the dumb roll that they were trying to do. There's multiple scenes in all 3 of these episodes where like Kamen Rider gets surrounded and then the enemies start to move in like a weird pattern, and the editing gets all weird with how they like try to like accelerate time, and I feel like they're trying to communicate like, oh, shocker agents are really fast, but then Kamen Rider just always breaks out or jumps away and it never like turns into anything. It's really goofy.
Like, what are they expecting to do? Like, it's real goofy. Also,
like, I'm always expecting them to like lunge in all at once and attack, and like that never really happens.
Right?
It's weird.
Right? Like, you would at least expect that, but no.
Yeah.
I was gonna say too, like, in terms of like the actual like design silhouettes, like Scorpion Man is like Scorpion Man from far away just looks like a dude in a suit. Like, like at least like Batman and Spider-Man, they like have like capes or whatever and like little like extrusions to give the sense that they are at least not a dude, but like this guy, like you see him and like he doesn't have like, I think the big thing is like maybe if they gave him like a tail or something, it would at least be more Scorpion, but like it doesn't even like communicate too much that it is a Scorpion Man if you didn't already have the name, other than like the one claw, which it could be a lot of things, right? Like a lot of things have claws. Like,
honestly, like the I think like Spider-Man and Batman suits were a lot more elaborate in terms of just having like prosthetics and stuff to go off of too, and this really just like looked real thrown together in comparison. But that's it. I think those are my overall thoughts on episode 3. Overall, so far, having a good time. Even though I had a lot of bad shit to say about this last episode, I still like that Hayase. I still think I like Hayase as a character, even though I think Scorpion Man's kind of dumb. I think I'm having a good time so far. I liked all 3 of these episodes, is what I was trying to say there. I got sidetracked by my own thoughts.
No worries.
We will. There's 98 of these, Fang. We are inevitably going to get to an episode that either one of us or maybe both of us thinks is dog shit, right? Like that's bound to happen.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like
some of these are going to be clunkers.
Like, you're not gonna hit it out of the park all 90-something episodes. Like,
I mean, both Kabuto and Build, which are the other 2 I've, like, seen, even though I haven't finished Build, like, there's episodes in there that are kind of, you know? That's just how
Absolutely.
TV shows are.
It's
the nature of the beast. So,
yeah,
but
it's just how statistics work.
I was planning on having us like record like 3 of these and then releasing the first episode around the time we recorded the third, but like I kind of want to get this out now. I think this went really well. I'm having a good time. I think I might try to edit this together real fast. So,
whatever you want to do. Do.
So, hey, if we're going to try doing this weekly, by the way, we have a dedicated recording night for this. Gonna try to not make these too long, because I technically have work the next day after, but I mean, we hit 2 hours here, and I feel like that's pretty good time, all things considered.
Yeah. In my work schedule, I have flexible hours, quote unquote, which means shit might just come up at some point. So we'll have to see. We'll have to play it.
Well, yeah, I mean, we can always work around things if stuff's happening, but we can at least try to shoot for that weekly schedule, I suppose.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And yeah, I think then, other than that, I'm probably gonna upload this one like right away because I don't have much of a backlog ready to go in terms of other stuff rendered out, and I kind of want to get this out in the public. But I think I might upload these every Friday. Let's say might be good to go for these. Maybe Friday or Saturday. We'll figure out a time with episode 2 probably, but I want to get this one out into the world to get everyone. This gives everyone time to catch up and just get subscribed to things they don't need to get subscribed to apparently, and all sorts of other fun things. And I hope everyone's having a good time along with us if you're watching along, because this is certainly something. So, thanks a lot, Fang, for joining me on this adventure. I feel like we're going to have a lot of fun with this one. I'm looking forward to recording these.
Thank you for having me on. Love me some Rider.
Yeah. All right. Well, see everyone. Thank you for watching. And also, if you somehow stumbled onto this podcast feed, I should say I'm going to make this both a podcast feed and also going to upload this as a video on my YouTube channel, Rasen Bran. So, yeah, either way, however you like to listen to these, you can do so. I'm sending this out through Pinecast, which I think means it should be available through like every big name podcatcher type app thing. And yeah, however you want to listen to these, either through a podcasting app or on YouTube. And if you're finding either of us for the first time somehow through this, who knows, maybe 10 years from now we're the Rider like commentary podcast somehow, and we're like halfway through fucking I don't know what's a series, Kuga or some shit. Yeah, I'm Rasen. I do video game stuff mostly, but also sometimes anime and other random bullshit on my YouTube channel, Rasen Bran, and other podcasts and things. And Fang is a indie game creator, which you can... Fang, where do you direct everyone for your stuff? Is it your Twitter or your Patreon?
I mean, I got my Twitter account, Fang Makes Stuff. You can find the @ down in the description, I guess, or whatever call to action text thing that you have, Rasen, planned. I wouldn't know.
I'll put our social shit and all that down below in the descriptions of these, as I am wont to do, to make it easy for people to find back to us. So yeah. But yeah, I think that's about it. Thanks a lot for joining us for this first episode, everyone. See you later.
Ciao.